A surgeon was awakened by a phone call at 2:30 a.m. one frigid winter morning. The nurse on the line explained that an 8-year-old boy had been hit by a car and was bleeding profusely. The attending physician had determined that unless the boy was operated on immediately, he would not survive. The surgeon threw on his clothes and rushed out in the sub-zero weather. He scraped his car windshield just enough to be able to see where he was going and started the icy 5-mile trip to the hospital. Each time he stopped at a red light, he opened his car door and leaned out just enough to scrape a little more ice from the windshield. At one intersection, about 1.5 miles from the hospital, the surgeon noticed a man wearing a brown coat and an old green hat, impatiently trying to cross the street. As the surgeon leaned out of his car, the man rushed over, grabbed him by the coat, and pulled him to the ground. The surgeon tried to put up a fight, but he was no match for the burly and apparently desperate man. While the surgeon struggled to his feet, the man jumped in the surgeon's car and drove away. Unhurt, the surgeon hurried to a phone booth and called for a cab. 20 minutes later, he finally made it to the hospital. "Where's the boy who was hit by the car?" he asked one of the nurses as he hurried through the emergency room. The nurse's eyes welled up with tears. "We couldn't stop the bleeding," she said. "He died just a few minutes ago. His parents are still in the waiting area if you'd like to speak to them." The surgeon took a deep breath and walked out into the waiting area. A woman in a long red coat was sitting in the middle of the room, sobbing silently into her hands. Behind her, a man stood with his hand on her shoulder. His head was bowed and his eyes were closed. He was wearing a brown coat and an old green hat. The boy's father, in his rush to get to the hospital, had pushed aside the one man who could have saved his son's life. How many people rush through life pushing aside the great physician, the only one who is capable of giving them life? Jesus alone can bring healing and hope to the broken lives, broken families, and broken relationships. It's our job as his followers to make sure that the world knows who he is, so that they can receive him rather than turn him away. This past year has closed many doors for us to do that, but it has also opened other new windows. So perhaps in 2021 we will have even more possibilities to make Jesus, the great physician, known to those around us and those who live in the communities we belong to. Paul says in Romans 10, quoting from Isaiah 52 at the close of his argument, "How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone not preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news."